Sometimes I compare being a wrestling fan to being a fan of the National Football League in the sense that when your team's playing in the season, you're focused on that season. You want them to win. You want them to make the playoffs. You want them to get to the Super Bowl. You want them to win the Super Bowl. And with wrestling, you sit there and you focus on the here and the now, and you want your guy to win this match, or you want this show to be good. You want this pay per view or special event to be good, what have you. But one thing that both NFL fans and wrestling fans, I think, definitely have in common is their desire and ability to always be looking ahead and that love of looking to the future. Sometimes, even if things are really good, they always want to look to the future and say, well, what we're not familiar with is better than what we are familiar with, whether that's always the case or not. And every year you see it with the NFL draft. People get excited about the draft. They're like, what new people is my team going to bring in? What new stars will my team find? How will the future look for my organization? Well, it comes to professional wrestling. You look at certain guys that are in certain spots, that are in big spots, and you sit there and say, well, this is good, or this is fine, or this sucks, or whatever. But then you're always looking to who's the next guy? Who's the fresh face? Who's the new face? And sometimes maybe it's a bit of an unhealthy obsession for all of us as wrestling fans, because instead of being kind of caught up in the moment and enjoying what we see, we're so focused on how things could be better and who could be the bigger stars come down the road. That's just the way it is. Nothing wrong with that. It's just, to me, the way I see it. And the way I see it right now is that the WWE really has the potential to have two big future mega stars for the next decade, whether they necessarily fully recognize it or realize it yet or not. I think right now there are two guys that are well positioned on this roster in this company to be those kind of breakout stars that lead this company into the next generation, if you will. And I think that's Roman Reigns, and I think that's Bray Wyatt. Now, some of you may disagree. You might sit there and say this guy, and you might sit there and say that guy. You can have your opinion. I don't care. Believe whatever you want. My belief is right now that the two guys that are the most well positioned for a plethora of reasons in the WWE right now to be those breakout stars, to be those guys that become the top guys, become the future megastars for the company, I truly believe are Roman Reigns and Bray Wyatt. And the interesting thing is when you look at both of the guys, they share some similarities, but there are some key distinct differences between the two. Both Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns come from wrestling families with branches that are very deep. People don't think about the Wyndham Rotunda family so much maybe as the Samoan family tree, but that's quite a tree that Bray Wyatt comes from. And we obviously know the lineage that Roman Reigns comes from, the Rikishis, the Rocks, the Alphas, the Sikas, the High Chief Peter Maivias, the Yokozunas. We know the family trees. These are guys that are third generation wrestlers, if you will, or second generation wrestlers, however you want to classify them. These are both guys that have been born into the business. These are both guys that you look for sometimes if you're a WWE to be there, because that love of the wrestling business is ingrained into them early on. They understand the business better. They get the business better than some of these other guys that you just randomly bring in that work on the indie circuit for years, because they were born into it. It was a part of their lifestyle. They get it and they understand it better than others maybe do. Well, when you look at Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns, like I said, they have that similarity. They both, in a way, have the WWE look too in terms of a top guy. Roman Reigns obviously has more of that traditional WWE main event look in terms of that tall, chiseled physique. He looks like he was made out of granite. He was sculpted out of rock, if you will. Roman Reigns has that traditional WWE muscle mark look that Vince McMahon gets an erection for. But Bray Wyatt also, in a way, has his own WWE look to him. He's big enough. He's got a unique enough look and presentation compared to anybody else. So you could sit there and say he falls into that category of having that main event WWE look. Guys over the years like The Undertakers or the Kanes of the world, excuse me, those guys, were different, but they still had a WWE look. A guy like a Mankind, guys that became top guys that looked different. They didn't always have to be the big time muscle bound freaks. Now, in terms of in-ring storytelling, I think both of these guys get the job done, but I think Bray Wyatt definitely has the edge in that. You look at Bray Wyatt right now, he's had 3 pay-per-view matches in 2014, and he's been a part of 3 of the better pay-per-view matches in 2014. That's him and Daniel Bryan at Royal Rumble, which is probably the best match so far in 2014 on pay-per-view. Then you had the Shield versus Wyatt 6-man tag at Elimination Chamber. And then you had John Cena and Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 30. Except for the finish, it was a really good match. It told a really good story. Roman Reigns, I think, is a little underrated and a little underestimated in terms of his ability to tell an in-ring story. But I don't think he's quite of the class of a Bray Wyatt. Now, you look at him from a mic skill standpoint, Bray Wyatt definitely has the edge there. That doesn't mean that Roman Reigns can't be a productive or effective mic worker in the future. You just haven't seen it a lot, and he's probably not quite ready for prime time in that category. Both of these guys have charisma. They have that ability to get the audience captivated. They have the ability to suck the audience in, to get them emotionally invested in their characters and what their characters are doing. Charisma is always one of those things people think it's this or it's that. To me, charisma ultimately is the ability to connect with the audience, the ability to get people sucked in, the ability to get people to suspend their disbelief and get sucked up in the moment, of what the character is and what the character is doing. And both of these guys, based off of the reactions that they're getting right now and have been for a period of time, clearly to me demonstrate that ability to do just that. In terms of the uniqueness of the character, you probably would give the edge to Bray Wyatt. Yes, you could sit there and say Roman Reigns is maybe a little unique, but you've seen more layers to the Bray Wyatt character. You've been given more elements of uniqueness for Bray Wyatt. That doesn't mean that Roman Reigns can't be a unique character, but right now I think Bray Wyatt is the more unique character. So when we talk about this, you'll notice I kind of gave you 5 different tools or 5 different measuring sticks, if you will. And it's kind of interesting because you would think that a Roman Reigns would be more of the guy that you would want to feature as that top megastar. But I think the guy right now that brings more of those 5 tools to be a main eventer to the table is Bray Wyatt. Because frankly, I think he has all 5 of them. However, does that necessarily mean that the WWE would prefer a Bray Wyatt become a big star over a Roman Reigns? I don't know, and I don't think so, because I think Roman Reigns has more of that traditional WWE look that the WWE loves. He ties into that Samoa tree, that Samoan heritage that the WWE loves. For all that the WWE doesn't like when it comes to their black wrestlers or their Asian wrestlers, they sure as hell love their Hispanic wrestlers, and they sure as fucking hell love their Samoan wrestlers. Never been able to understand why that is, but they sure as hell do. And Roman Reigns, with his ties to The Rock and his ties to Keish and his ties to Yokozuna and Alpha and Sika and all these other Samoan wrestlers over the years, Roman Reigns still might end up being the guy, even if he doesn't have the same tools of a Bray Wyatt. He might end up being the guy that gets featured more, becomes that heir apparent to John Cena, because they feel like Roman Reigns will be a little bit safer and he will have more of that look. He will get more women to watch the product. Kids will like him more. I'm not sure, but that's kind of the thought process I get. The interesting thing is, though, is that when you look at the future of both of these guys, a lot of people are going to say right now that Roman Reigns is going to be 5 years from now the number 1 babyface in the company, and Bray Wyatt is going to be the number 1 heel in the company. And I just think that's complete hogwash. I think that is total trash. And the reason I say that is when you look at a Roman Reigns, he probably is better suited right now as a babyface. But at some point in time, you could probably just as easily turn him heel and it would work. When you look at a Bray Wyatt, on the other hand, you start to run into problems, because Bray Wyatt has gotten to the point where he is so compelling and he is so interesting, he is so unique, he is so entertaining. The longer the WWE tries to go against the grain and present him as a heel, present him as a villain, present him as a bad guy, all they're going to do is get the fans more invested in him and get him more behind him, and they're just going to eventually turn him even more babyface than the WWE would ever plan on or envision. It's a very interesting problem for the WWE down the road, because you have these 2 kind of big future megastars in the works, in my opinion, in a Roman Reigns and a Bray Wyatt. But ultimately, I do feel that both of them are best served on the same side of the fence, that's as a babyface. Now, granted, in divergent ways, 2 entirely different babyfaces. But when you look at a Bray Wyatt, so many of the things that he does are so interesting, like I said, so captivating, so compelling, get you emotionally invested in his character to the point where you want to cheer this guy. You want to root for this guy. So sitting there and continuing to try and force us to boo this guy and hate this guy is actually becoming counterproductive. At some point in time, the WWE will have a decision on their hands, and as I mentioned before, they will eventually have to turn Bray Wyatt babyface, maybe much sooner than they actually had anticipated. It's going to be very interesting the next year, 2, 3, 4 years down the road to see where they go with Roman Reigns, to see where they go with Bray Wyatt, because these are two guys here that are both under the age of 30, that have a lot of things going for them. They've been born into the business. They've lived the life of the business for many years, understand what it takes to become a big star in the business. Their best years are clearly ahead of them. If the WWE doesn't sit there and make these two guys household names and big-time megastars over the course of the next 3 to 4 years, then shame on the WWE. Shame on the WWE for being too damn conservative and trying to sit there and play it safe and ride the same 1 or 2 or 3 ponies all the way into the fucking grave. Shame on the WWE for not realizing the reality that is smacking them in the freaking face right now. That you've got something different. You've got something fresh. You've got two guys that could not only help the company now, but eventually be the guys that are your foundation, that are your building blocks, that are the guys that can carry your company for the next decade, if not more. To me, right now, for the WWE, everything that this company does in the next 12 to 24 months has to be about making Roman Reigns and Bray Wyatt the two biggest stars in the company. It has to be. Because at some point in time, how much longer can you ride the John Cena train? How much longer can you ride the Randy Orton train, the Dave Bautista train, the Triple H train? You know, the Breakfast Club has slowly got to be phased out at some point in time, you would think. These guys have been featured on television for years in top spots. At some point in time, you will continue to get a diminishing return on it because people are tired of it, because it's the same old shit. Now you give us a guy like Roman Reigns at the top and Bray Wyatt at the top. You give us two potential opponents for these old guys to feud with down the road, so making those guys more compelling too, but giving us a fresh look and a fresh perspective at the top of the company. It has to happen. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, the WWE is going to be more willing to put all of their eggs into the Roman Reigns basket. And yes, I say that in large part because of the Samoan lineage and him having more of the traditional muscle mark kind of WWE look that Vince McMahon absolutely loves still to this day out of his main eventers. But I think it's going to get very interesting down the road because it could get to a point, unless Cena totally sabotages him, which he's trying to do a damn good job of it right now, but the crowd still isn't buying it, still isn't having it. You know, when you get to a Bray Wyatt, this is a guy with all the tools. This is a guy that has everything in place. And this is a guy right here that could potentially become the most over individual in the WWE right now and in the future. You know, you can sit there and talk about Daniel Bryan being the most over with the live event audience right now, and that may be true. But Bray Wyatt isn't that far behind. Bray Wyatt is the second hottest character in the WWE right now, and maybe Roman Reigns is the third hottest character. And the difference between 1, 2, and 3 really isn't all that much. WWE, I implore you, seize this opportunity. Seize the chance to make these two guys your Rock and Austin for this generation. The fans will appreciate it. The fans will love it. You eventually will love it when you make more money because you have created two big megastars, two more guys that you can rely upon, two more guys that you could count on, two more guys that you could build your present and your future around. It's one of those win-win-win, just fucking do it type of situations. Now let's see if the WWE actually has the balls to do it or if they're going to continue to say Breakfast Club rules, bitches.